It's good to have all of you here this morning. It's good to have Jack and Carol back with us. They've been gone for 2 or 3 weeks in South Texas, where it's supposed to be really warm right now. And it's good to have some who have been sick back with us. I'm sorry Rob and Paula and Gideon aren't back, but we're glad you're here. And it is the month of December. And that means that 2023 is soon to be history. And that means that I think in 3 weeks and 1 day, we will be at Christmas Day. And December is a different kind of month. It's a time when people are a little bit more kind and a little more thoughtful. And it's a time when maybe the pace of life changes just a little bit. And it should be a wonderful month for all of us, and I hope you have a blessed December. We're going to be looking this morning in John chapter 15, the first 7 verses. The problem with these 7 verses for me is they are really familiar. You're going to recognize them immediately. We even sing a song that is derived from these verses. Now, I don't personally care for the song very much, but we used to sing it a lot. And I will tell you that I think I have spoken on this passage one time in this kind of setting, and it was a miserable failure. I still remember to this moment, it was a miserable failure. I think I have taught one class on it. It was equally a miserable failure. And here we are going to try it a third time, and you're probably wondering what's about to happen. But I will tell you that I'm looking at the passage differently, because you may remember that last week I said, I looked at this section of material and I prayed about it and I asked God through His Spirit to show me something, and I did see something that I hadn't seen before, and it was so obvious and it was so plain, and so it must be important. But it remains to be seen how it works. I hope it's a blessing to you, but it remains to be seen how it works. We're going to begin by reading these familiar verses. We're going to try to read them together on the screen, and there's a little lag time on that, but let's look at verses 1 through 7, where Jesus is saying to His apostles, and it carries over to us, I am the true vine, and my Father is the gardener. Now that's easy to understand, isn't it? And if we were in grape country, we would understand it even better. Jesus said, I am the vine. My Father is the gardener. He cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit. And I don't know exactly what that means. I don't know what it means to be a branch connected to the vine and not bear any fruit, and what it means when it says He cuts them off. That's where I've had trouble. And not only that, while every branch that does bear fruit, He prunes so that it will be even more fruitful. And I'm thinking, I understand the pruning process, and I understand cutting away dead branches, but what does it mean if I am connected to the vine and I am bearing some fruit, that He prunes me? Does He discipline me? Does He give me trials? Does He grow talents and ability? I don't know exactly what that means that He's doing in my life. Now it gets a little easier from here. He says to the apostles, you are already clean because of the word I've spoken to you. Remain in me, as I also remain in you. No branch can bear fruit by itself. It must remain in the vine. Neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me. And now, I am the vine, you're the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. If you do not remain in me, you are like a branch that is thrown away, then it withers, and such branches are gathered up or picked up They're thrown into the fire and burned. But if you remain in me and my words remain in you, you can ask whatever you wish. It will be done for you. Now, did you see what was plain in that passage? Did you see what was obvious in that passage that I have missed all the while? This one phrase, it was on the title slide. Did you see that? As I read those 7 verses, the idea is Jesus says over and over and over again, you need to remain in me. The idea of remain means to exist in me. It means to continue with me. I need for you to continue with me. And if you do, here are the results. And Bert puts them on the screen. If you remain, here's what you get. I will remain in you. And you will bear much fruit. And you can ask whatever you wish, and it will be done for you. But if you don't remain in me, look at what is happening. You're going to be thrown away. And you're going to dry up. And you gather in that area of the world, and you gather even right now dry material, and you dispose of it by fire. You burn it all up. So if that's kind of the case, wouldn't we all want to remain in him? Wouldn't we all want to remain? But by virtue of the fact that Jesus is telling these apostles, you need to remain in me, and he says it over and over again, you get the idea that it is relatively easy for people to make the choice not to remain connected to Jesus. Everybody see that idea? You get the idea, you might not choose to remain. Now, let's just do a little experiment here. Can you think of someone, and maybe a name will pop into your mind relatively easy. Can you think of someone by name who was connected to the vine, who is now no longer connected? And maybe you start with your immediate family. And maybe a name even of a parent will come to your mind. Or maybe the name of a sibling, a brother or sister will come to your mind. Or maybe a name of a child would even come to your mind. And all that's really difficult. But you move out beyond your family. And can you think of a name of someone who used to be connected really closely to Jesus, and now they're not connected at all? And that person may have been a Bible class teacher for you and taught Bible class for you over and over again, and now they're not a part of it. That person could even be a preacher, and maybe you really like the preacher, and now they're not connected to Jesus at all. Could everyone kind of get a name in mind? So it's so common that people don't remain, and my question became this question: why? If Jesus is begging us to remain in him, if he's telling us all these benefits of remaining in him, if he's telling us of a kind of a dismal future if we don't remain in him, why don't people remain in him? Well, I wrote down some thoughts. They're not all inclusive, by the way. But the first one is this one, and I don't intend to spend very much time on it because it's just so obvious. We talk about it all the time. Do you believe that Satan is real? And do you believe that Satan is constantly tempting us? And he appeals to our fleshly appetites? And if we have this appetite for power and recognition, and we become more and more arrogant, and we abuse people, and we walk away, and we have this appetite for immorality that produces all kinds of things in our lives. And it just kind of goes on like that. He just tempts us over and over and over again. And he tempts us with money, and we become greedy, and we become people who easily lie, and we cheat, and we steal, and we mistreat people. I'll tell you something else Satan does. It's really real. He loves to put doubt into our minds. And I'm amazed at how often I hear people who are now doubting what is so plain in Scripture and what they have learned through the years, because there's this philosophy sometimes that people say, especially for young people, we need to tear your faith down so we can build it back up, and you have your own faith and not your parents' faith. And so they put some doubt into your mind. And I'm saying, do you know what happens when doubt gets in your mind? It's so hard to erase. It's so hard to erase. If I'm thinking about buying a new kitchen appliance, and I have my mind made up on this one brand, and I talked to Janet, and I talked to Cheryl, and they say, yeah, that's a good brand. And then I go talk to Ronita, and she said, I tell you, I bought that brand one time, and it was really bad, and I'll never have it again. She puts what in my mind? And I probably won't buy it. And I think a lot of people have walked away because Satan's influence. And I could add persecution to that, but I need to go on because I have a couple others that get a little more difficult in our understanding. So I want you to look at reason number 2 with me. I think people don't remain because they grow weary. They just grow weary with what we do. Do you remember that Paul will write to a group of people in a city called Galatia, or an area called Galatia? And it's in chapter 6, and it's in verse 9. He says, don't grow weary in your well-doing. And we are a people who easily grow weary. And the old adage is that when you find someone who's willing to do something, you give them what? More, because they will do it. And they do it over and over again, and they do it with such zeal, and they do it for so long until finally the common term is they just burn out. And they just say, I don't want to do it anymore. I've been an elder for all this length of time, and I'm just worn out with it. I stop. I've been a teacher for all this length of time. I'm just worn out with it. I've been taking food to people for all this length of time. I'm just no more. They just grow weary in their well-doing. Do all of you understand that? In jobs, we take vacation. But sometimes we don't. We just wear people out. But it's more than that. Later in John chapter 15, and I'll not cover it again, but later in John chapter 15, Jesus will look at these apostles and he'll say another truth. He says, the world is going to hate you. The world is going to hate you. It hated me first, but it's going to hate you. And the world's going to try to do bad things to you. Now, you and I see the reality of that right now, don't we? That the world is getting to be a harder and harder place. And the world does not like God. And the world does not like Jesus Christ. Because the world is darkness. And darkness has all this evil in it. And God is light. And Jesus is light. And when the light shines, it makes the evil in the darkness come to light. And we see it. And darkness does not want to be exposed. It's kind of like watching an old movie about the mafia. And I don't know much about the mafia, but I just watch those old movies once in a while. And And they're a closely held, highly corrupt, really mean group of people. And the police, the FBI, the whomever, they're trying really hard all the while to expose it. And they finally get an informant who's going to shed the light on it. But it's so dangerous to be an informant, because if the mafia finds out about it, they're going to come and what? Destroy you. Because the darkness does not want to be exposed. Or it's kind of like you've lived in this one place for a long time, but the community has changed. And it's become more and more dangerous. Susan and I used to go visit a little lady in Albuquerque. And I was always amazed in her neighborhood how she had bars on the window and she had bars on the door, because that area had become more and more dangerous. And so you do everything you can to protect yourself until finally you just grow weary of it. You grow weary of being on your guard all the time. And you what? You move. You go someplace else. And I think people just get tired. They grow weary. And they become disconnected from the vine. And we don't want people to grow weary. We don't want to overload people. Does that make sense to anybody? The next one's worse. The next one's worse. You may not like it at all. Do I dare say we get bored? Do I dare say it? Because we do a lot of routine. We do a lot of things that are routine over and over and over again. And routine sometimes becomes really boring. And I see it more and more in young people. And I see it more and more in young families. And we are now in a different culture. Oh, our culture has changed so much. There was a time when people drove their wagons to church on Sunday morning. But that was it. And then our culture got to where we could drive cars, but we'd have gospel meetings, they tell me, for 2 weeks. Can you imagine? Can you imagine going for 2 weeks every single night? And then they got shortened to a week, and then they got shortened to 3 days, and now they don't happen. And that's not an indictment on anything, except our culture is changing. And you know what? We carry these phones, and they try to tell us that every year we need a new one. And we look at a car, and our car's only 2 years old, but we look at a new car, and it's got so many more things to it that make driving so much easier and better. And technology is changing everything so that our attention span is shorter than ever. That's why I try to keep lessons really, really short. Because I know if I go very long, I lose everyone. And even right now in this lesson, your mind may have gone 2 or 3 different places already. And we do something else. We do the routine long enough, it becomes a tradition. And we hold a tradition long enough, and you know what we think? We think now it's a matter of right and wrong. And we become very much like it was in the day of Jesus with the religious people then. And especially young people look at that and say, no, I don't want to be a part of, no. That's why here on Sunday mornings, I even worry about how we do it right now. We try to keep it as simple as we know how to keep it. We try to keep it brief. We try to make it really meaningful for everyone. Because we don't want you to get bored with it. And that's why on Wednesday nights, if you ever have a question, sometimes the elders say, we're not going to have it for a month. We're not going to have it for 3 weeks. We're going to do it a little differently. Because the routine becomes boring. Now you think about this. Why do marriages fail? Why do marriages fail? Because Satan gets involved. And they get tempted. That's one big reason. And sometimes marriages just get weary. They get weary of the grind. And sometimes the routines just become boring and they want something different. And why do people quit jobs? They get tempted with grasses or pastures that look more green over here. And they grow weary with doing the same thing over and over again, and they get bored with it. And they grow weary of the fight, and they just quit. It's for so many other things. And it happens right here in the body of Christ or the kingdom of heaven or the kingdom of Jesus. It is so important that we remain connected to the vine. We connected to Jesus. We remain in Him. But you got Satan to contend with. You got a world that doesn't like you. It's getting worse. And you got this routine we got to be careful about. So what do we do with all this? Well, let me tell you the end of Galatians chapter 6 and verse 9, where he says, don't grow weary in well-doing. He says, but if you continue, you will get the prize. If you'll continue with this, you'll get what you've been wanting. And so I have these two things to say to you. You need to focus on what really matters. What really matters, and that is heaven. And that is life, that is a set-apart life from this world. I don't care what anybody tells you. I don't care how many people speak Satan's words to you. It's not a happier life out there. The two Gregs and I were talking early this morning about, I read an article yesterday about Charlie Munger, is that right? He's Warren Buffett's partner. He just died a little while ago at 99 years of age. And he said, you know, Warren and I decided in 1958, when we built our houses, we wouldn't buy another house. He said we could build mansions. He said Warren could have 6 or 8 houses anywhere he wants them. We both decided we'd live just where we're living. Because we got to noticing that our friends who were getting rich were buying these mansions and they were getting less happy. And he said, I can tell you if Warren goes off and buys for himself about, this was the interview he did right before he died. He said if he goes out and buys 6 or 8 houses across the country, which he could do easily, he'll be less happy. And he said, all this stuff in the world, he said, we didn't want our kids raised in that kind of environment. We didn't want our kids acting like that. Whatever they tell you about this world is probably going to be a lie. And so here's one of the richest men on the face of the earth saying, my 58 model house is pretty good. Focus on the prize and just be a little tougher, okay? You just got to fight. You got to hang in there. Because the easiest thing in this world is to just quit. The easiest thing in the world is just to stop. I got a little offended over here, and I got a little, I'm tired. It's just quit. But Jesus is appealing to us this morning. Remain in me. Remain in me. And we're going to try not to make it routine and boring. And we're going to try not to wear you out. When we just added something more to Janet, and Janet's already doing a lot. We don't want to wear people out. Only you can battle Satan. I can't battle Satan for you. So, remaining in Jesus is the answer. He died to save us. He died to make us a part of his kingdom.